Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for agreeing to come on.
You're
I'm
welcome.
very excited to have this conversation. I will let you introduce yourself, Jess, and
hmm
let people know who you are, what you do, and why we're here to talk about this.
Okay, well, I'm Jess, Jess Wall. So I'm a psychological skills mentor. I work for Chimp Management. So that is, if you haven't heard of it, it is Professor Steve Peters is my boss, and I'm one of his mentors who go around. It's based on his work, so the Chimp model, which is based on the neuroscience of how our minds work. So I spend my life going around the country or working from home, helping people to understand why they do the things they do, why they don't do the things they'd like to do, and what's going on for them in terms of blood supply around their brain, really.
Yeah.
I'll work one to one, teach people on mass, but really the changing habits is one of the areas that we might focus on, as I know we're going to talk about today. But it can be anything from why have I got people call it the shitty committee in their heads, or why have I just, why do I keep doing it and then later go, oh my God, why did I do that again?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my job. It's the best job in the world.
Great. So, my journey to the world of Chimp was just word of mouth. Many
Yeah.
years ago, read The Chimp Paradox on a recommendation of somebody else who deemed it to be the best book they'd ever read. And that is, to me, that's like somebody putting a light on, right? If that's the best book you've ever read, I need to read that because it
Mhm.
might be the best book I've ever read. And it was definitely a pivotal point. Talking to patients, it enabled me to start to see
Mm.
why often what they did was at odds with what they said.
Yeah.
And then in meetings, I would sit in meetings in my old practice and go, oh, yeah, there's a few chimps out in this room. So it definitely gave me insight into understanding people on another level, and which is why I've never looked back.
Yeah.
And your journey to being here is because I've gone on to do more work. He wrote a second book called A
Mhm.
Path Through the Jungle, which I do recommend to people, which I would say is A level. it's
Yeah.
like it's like moving on to
It's
A
the
level.
manual, isn't it? It's the
Yeah,
textbook.
because these are about learning skills. It's a skill to understand how your mind works,
Mm.
and you don't just read the book and go, oh, everything's sorted. I
No.
mean, it just doesn't happen. But on the back of having worked through A Path Through the Jungle and done the conference, I took part in one of the courses, and you were the mentor on the course, and I've had tremendous value from it, and here we
Great.
are today.
hmm
So let's assume that most people haven't read the book,
hmm
and that's the bit where I struggle because I can't necessarily always de-chimp the language quick enough to
Mm.
help people to understand, especially in a clinical setting
Mm.
with patients. Sometimes, you're always against the clock. I have more time with the clients that I'm working with, but it might be helpful as well just for you to outline how on earth did you end up being a skills mentor in Chimp management? What was your path to that?
Long and varied, long in the tooth, but really my kind of interest in work with one to one, more therapeutic work. I started off training to be a person centered counsellor, found it, I loved it, but found it quite frustrating because there's not enough forward momentum for me. I'm quite an action person. I want people to, if they're coming to me saying they want to make a change, I found counselling is brilliant. The talking therapies were brilliant. But just as personally speaking, I wanted to help people go, okay, so what are we going to do about this? Then I went into cognitive behavioural coaching.
Okay.
And then from there into neuro-linguistic programming, which I absolutely love. I'm fascinated by the use of language that we have. Then I started my own. I was running wellbeing courses and things for the county council, and alongside that, decided to branch out and have my own coaching business,
Mm.
which suddenly I just started attracting. Must have been because I was a parent, attracted lots and lots of parents talking about their children.
Mm.
And so I started working with loads of younger people, teenagers, primary school, and I found the Chimp model, and I was like, this is genius. They get it. Kids get it. And then thought, I know adults really get it, and I got it.
Mm.
So I just stalked Chimp management and said, got a job. Because by that point I was like, I'm done with the self-employment thing. It was a lot
Mm.
of work and a lot of things I don't enjoy, and thought this is going to give me access to more people to be able to help, but to hone my skills as well, because it is, as I say, it's very forward focused. And if I complement that with the person-centered counselling skills I learned, neurolinguistic programming, cognitive behavioural therapy, they all tie up together. But chimp language is just something that the majority of people I've worked with really get. It's simple. It's simple neuroscience. So you've got the science bit, but you've also got, oh, okay, I can access this. I don't have to read like a medical journal. So and absolutely the proof of the pudding, the more I work at Chimp, the more I work with people, it works. I see results. People make changes and they come back saying, no, actually, I have tweaked my behavior, or I've changed this habit because I understand myself just that at it's like a different level, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I can really connect with that point you made there about it being forward focused, because obviously as GPs, we're not therapists in any way, although often the assumption is that you are. People with, sometimes really deep rooted psychological problems squeezed into a 10 or 15 minute appointment, pouring out things, and you go, oh, I can't go there. I haven't got the skill set, I haven't got the time, and I have nothing to offer you. And I think probably that was a light bulb moment for me with Chimp, in that being able to say to somebody, okay, that you can separate yourself from the behaviour, from the history, but you need a model to do it. And it gives you something to action and to move forward, rather than just poring over the past, which I'm sure is done very well and is very meaningful in the right setting, but that right setting isn't with your GP.
No, certainly not with your GP in 10 minutes. And again, I find the past fundamental, and I always delve into the past with my clients, because our Chimp system, and I don't know if you want me to kind of go over the basics of it, but it is very much rooted in childhood. We have a very strong Chimp system from the ages of about pre-birth, from about 8 weeks into fetal life until 12 years old. You could look at kids and go, they're basically chimps.
Pure chimp.
They've got very little else going on. They've got very little executive function going on. So anything that happens in that time has formed massively strong connections in the brain. You've got neural pathways that are strongly myelinated. So they're superhighways that we're going to default to. So it is really interesting and great to find the origin of things, because then it just makes sense. So you go, oh, that's why I do that. That's why my chimp thought it was safe to just like run away and hide when it was little. Or that's why my chimp thought it was safe to argue with somebody. But now I'm a grown up, so I need to kind of understand it, take care of it. But if I want to make a different choice, I've got to start doing that consciously now.
Building that new road.
And building the new road, we've got the superhighway, but we can build a detour or a spaghetti junction.
Yeah. Okay, so I think for people who haven't read the book or read it so long ago that it is a bit of a distant memory, that reminder of what the chimp is, it's in all of us. And I love the line that Steve uses in any time he's interviewed on any podcast, in that you can't necessarily change it, but you can manage it.
Yes. Yeah, so you'll often get to, people want to control themselves, control their behaviour, control themselves, control their emotions. And it's like, but you give up on that one. You're setting yourself an unrealistic expectation. But certainly we can manage. And if I just briefly kind of, so that people understand what we're talking about, if we break the brain, the Chimp model breaks it into 3 parts from an incredibly complex and beautifully unique. I mean, I always start my presentations with, you are all gorgeously unique, because your brain is made up of so many pathways, and they're unique and individual to you. But Steve broke it into these 3 parts. I do that.
Yeah.
So first part being your orbitofrontal cortex and your amygdala. So these are the 2 bits of your brain that formed 8 weeks into fetal life. And this is what we call the Chimp system. So its agenda is survival. So it's reactive. It wants to get rid of a problem in the moment. It works with emotions. It does have logic, but they're based on what it's feeling. So any feeling you have we'll say this is the Chimp system in action. Carries on with you throughout your life, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's always there. It's definitely there in the middle of the night as well.
It certainly is.
Yeah. So that's my kind of your 2 o'clock in the morning syndrome. Well, the chimp's awake because it's always on this kind of survival path. So you've got that system that is making decisions and it's thinking. Then you've got a computer system in your brain which is storing everything you experience, your beliefs, experiences, scenarios you've been through, even like imagined scenarios. So you've got that part. These two can work together all your life without, and I guess some people around the world or in politics maybe, operating in chimp system their whole lives. And then it's not till about 2 or 3 years old that we get this dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, top of your head. It starts kind of kicking into action, but it's quite slow. So now we've got two thinking parts, but they're quite different. The chimp being reactive survival, and the human up here, the dorsolateral, we call that the human, and that's logic, fact, consequence, time, greater good of all, self-fulfillment, all that good stuff, working with values. So they're quite different, and that's why language is great. People say, oh, one half of me says this, the other half says that, or my brain just told me that. But that's because they've got conflicting agendas. So that in itself, knowing that you've got two parts of you. So when you're saying, oh, my brain is telling me this, it's like, well, yeah, there are two systems working here, and they're both decision making, but the chimp's stronger.
Yeah. And I think that's probably a key point, that if I've only got 2 or 3 minutes to try and explain this to a patient, perhaps who's really struggling, then that's what I'll often come back to, is that actually one part of your brain just wants to keep you alive and keep you safe at all costs. And it's probably doing quite a good job of that.
Yeah.
But the more rational part, that later on that evening you're going, why on earth did I say this? What on earth did I do that for? That's a bit slower to react. They're both part of your brain, but understanding how the two work together unlocks a potential to perhaps have a bit more insight into why you do, and not beat yourself up about it, I think, because people tend to be really self-critical sometimes when they've done something on impulse. And when I'm working with people to try and help them change their behaviour in a positive way, in a way that their human side would prefer, then doing that from a place of self-compassion and understanding is generally more successful than just self-chastising and being angry and frustrated with yourself.
Yeah, and that's in the language as well, isn't it? So if you came to me, Lynette, and you said, I've got this problem, it would be so easy for me to be compassionate and to listen and to try to understand you and think, what's the root of the problem? And that's effectively what we're trying to help people do with their minds. And it just makes it easier when you dissociate from it and go, well, what's going on for my chimp? And that's where it's like fundamental, separate yourself. So with your patient, say, okay, what might be going on? What's the behavior that you don't like? And why might you be doing it? I mean, you haven't got time in a 10-minute consultation, but if they're going away and trying to engage by disengaging and treating themselves as their best friend, I mean, that's the beauty, that's the power. And certainly, as you're saying, you wouldn't tell your best friend that they were an idiot or that they were stupid or that they weren't as good as other people. And yet we do it to ourselves all the time.
Yeah. And interestingly, when I've had teenagers, because they're always an entity in themselves to see as a GP, when they're caught up perhaps with a lot of anxiety and behaviours are becoming unhelpful, maybe self-destructive, giving them that example of, oh, well, actually, what would you say to your friend if this was your friend?
Yeah.
Because they all want to be a good friend and they want to be supportive. And I've found that sometimes that can be a little way in of helping them to see the separation within themselves sometimes. I
think it's a really good point, especially with teens. But we say that like the chimp system has needs. The human has needs, and we know that they're like values and all of the stuff we've thought out. Whereas the chimp system has these kind of drives that it needs to fulfill, and they're different for everybody. But in teens, it's quite a specific case because they have a very strong, what's called a troop drive, which is basically its need to belong to a group. And on an evolutionary level, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because it is the age at which normal humans who aren't micromanaged and find housing difficult should be moving away from their parents. Yes. And therefore, troop is really important because you have to be in a troop to be safe.
Yes.
This part is called the chimp because it's fit for a jungle. And in a jungle, you need to be in a troop to be safe. Yes. So teens are very strongly driven by the troop drive. It's incredibly strong in most of them. That's why you'll get that kind of behaviour of trying to impress friends, looking the same as everybody else, that real need to belong.
Yeah.
But it is a strong one. We can harness it, as you're
Yes.
doing, by
Yeah.
saying, what would you do for your own friend, and what effect is this having on your friends?
Yeah.
So and it often carries on to adulthood for ourselves. How can you help yourself or appeal to that other system to help you instead of hinder you? Because
Yeah.
generally the chimp system will do that. If you call on it for help,
Yeah.
it will respond.
Yeah. So if someone's got a particular behavior that keeps coming up that they would like to change when they're calm and rational and reflecting on things in the evening, how can they think about what things the chimp is responsible for in terms of getting to the bottom of that? So even if it was something in terms of, say, a repeated pattern of eating something, how can the chimp model help them understand why is it that at a particular point in the day they are drawn to eating something that then perhaps further down the line it disappears and it's gone, and they're wondering why on earth that was so hard to resist at a certain point in the day?
And I'd probably say we can demonize before I answer that, in some ways, we can demonize the chimp quite easily and go, oh, it's my chimp doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, is it the computer? So there's,
Okay.
with habitual things, the habits we have are actually already in our computer. So it's like, oh, well, it's Easter. At Easter, I eat a lot of chocolate.
Yes.
It's a habit. It's shaking somebody's hand is a habit. Eating something you don't really want to eat at 9 o'clock in the evening because you've seen the time it's 9 o'clock in the evening. So it's not really the chimp necessarily who's deciding. It might be just that we've got some kind of habitual behavior. So that's the first thing to do, is work out, is this just a habit, or is there something that is being achieved from that behavior?
Okay. So if somebody is used to having something sweet after eating because that was the way they were brought up as a child, then it's out of the hands of the chimp. The chimp has handed it over to a different part of the brain, stored it away, and that's now your normal.
Yes.
Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
And so to try and change that at the age of 40, something that you did, perhaps for the previous 40 years, is there a mechanism what's the best way to go about dealing with things that are in the computer that are maybe hardwired, like we say, a super highway, in order to move things in different direction? Because as we know from the people you've worked with and the people I've worked with, it can be done. It's just because it's in the computer, it doesn't mean that it's there forever.
No, absolutely not. Okay, so first thing is to find out what the underlying beliefs and behaviors are.
Okay.
So you dig down and say, kind of what is it I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it underneath that what belief do I have about myself or about that activity? And often that will come with habits, will become down to like a self-image. So I'm a person who loves chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore I eat loads of chocolate. I'm a smoker. I'm a drinker. I'm a whatever it is. There's an element that might just be an identity within there.
Okay.
There might be some kind of underlying helpful outcome from it, like a positive intention of why that behavior is in there. So if I find a situation stressful, I'll go and have a cigarette. What does that give me? So what's the positive intention there? Does it help my breathing?
Mm-hmm.
Does it mean that I get away from everybody else and then they don't want to come near me because I smell a bit of smoke? These things. I worked with somebody once who was an alcoholic, and then they realised that the reason that they had started drinking, and again then it had gone into the computer, was because they found conversations with people really difficult, that they couldn't get their way. Their chimp actually had put it in there because it really wanted to get its way, wanted to get its point across, so it got quite aggressive. And then somewhere in the system it realised that wasn't really very helpful. So, okay, if I drink, then I end up being quiet.
Okay.
So then I can just retreat into a corner. Everybody can think, oh, well, they've got an excuse, they're inebriated, whatever it is. So the positive intention that was put in there initially was to get out of a situation and avoid it.
Okay.
And it manifested through drinking.
Yeah.
You see that? So there's like a really convoluted path to get into a behaviour that we no longer want. So if it is that case, then we're starting, okay, so what was it giving me? It was giving me a way to get out of a conversation and not get aggressive.
Okay.
So what's the alternative? Now we start looking for alternatives.
Yeah.
But the behaviour's in the computer already, and then we've got addictive substances, of course, that's going to be just hard to kick.
Yeah, I mean, it's multi-layered, isn't it, with alcohol, because you've got the physiological dependence as well. I was thinking as you were describing, I'm sure there's many people, and I've been in a workplace where, you know, there's a routine of perhaps things being brought in on a Friday, that you go along with eating the Friday donuts or whatever for a period of time. And it then becomes not only about the reward from the donut, but you're getting away from your desk, you're getting a little bit of social interaction.
Social.
But at the point that you decide, actually, I don't need any more donuts in my life,
Mm-hmm.
then not only are you losing the sweetness and the reward of the food, but perhaps you've got other things associated with that, like the social connection.
Social. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then in that case, but you're noticing it. So then the question is, well, how else would I fulfill that desire to be sociable?
Yeah.
And if the chimp's saying, like, say for example, that was people who, that's just what we do as a company. Like, we have donuts together, and that makes me feel part of the gang. So I don't want to step out and feel alien or different because that's the norm. So now we almost have to convince the brain that just by stepping out and saying, no, I don't fancy a donut, that still makes you belong to the group.
Yeah.
And actually, so you might start working on helpful beliefs that are things like the person who's a bit different is really adds something to a group.
Yeah.
But I'm still listening to my chimp. I'm listening to what its intention was. It wants to belong to the group and it wants to have some time out. So we still go along with a person who's able to just go, nah, I don't fancy a donut. That's fine. Let's have a chat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's do something else. You know, like, I don't know, I'm eating this. And that still makes me important because it's all about this chimp wanting to potentially fit in. So I'll start appealing to it and giving it a different kind of fulfillment.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a really important thing to take away from that, because one of the things that's come up in the women that I'm working with is particularly around alcohol. Not so much, I don't deal with people with addictions, but people who've perhaps had a long time of social drinking.
Yeah.
And if they're anything like me, get to 47 and go, oh, I might have liked this once, but how I feel the next day, the trade-off isn't worth it. But it can be quite challenging to actually break that habit loop, and it's not always possible. But it, again, without being addicted to alcohol, there's something about the association with it in certain situations that you can feel like you're missing out by stepping outside of that. Maybe what do you think's going on mostly there, or is it too individual to make generalizations?
I think it's very individual, but it's so, I think it's useful to know it's such a quick system, isn't it? So if somebody's at the bar and they say, would you like a drink? And because we've done it for so long, said, right, okay, I'm in a bar. So your brain's forever putting two and two together and saying, I'm in a bar situation, I've been offered a drink, what do I usually drink?
Yeah.
So some of that is simply prep.
Okay.
Of saying, before I go to the bar, I'm having a lime and soda. I mean, I love a lime and soda. And more I try to put that in my computer. I don't know, why do I want a glass of wine? I don't want one. Lime and soda. So it's like, I've pre-decided what I'm going to do.
That's really helpful.
And it's so simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just like pre-decide and think it through. And the other thing about that, I would say, is, but we need to know why we're going to do it.
Okay.
And that is getting your chimp on board, I think. So it's very easy to say, you know, I'm going on a diet, or I'm going to order a lime and soda, and I've got my plan in place, and I know it's possible. I am a person, I'm not addicted to anything. I just want to change a little behavior. That's very human for me. That's kind of saying, with my logical head, I know that that's a good thing to do, and I know what my plan is. What gets in the way is the chimp system that's thinking, but that's more fun, that's rewarding, that we had fun doing that, whatever it was. So before you can put that plan into place, you've really got to convince the chimp that this is a good idea.
So is that where bringing it back round to how you see yourself? So I would say to somebody, you're now a person who trains, you're now a fit person. That's who you are now. And so is that what you're alluding to? Tying the new thing you want to do with the new person that you've decided you are.
Yes. And to add to it, to add strength to that. So you've got a new identity, but you're also thinking about the longer term in terms of your chimp. And we know that the chimp responds to emotion. So So we can further appeal to it. Again, we're going more and more layers. I know this is really kind of complex stuff, but we're going to saying, what's the suffering that I might have if I do change or I don't change?
Okay.
So if that is, I want to be a person who exercises, who trains, what's the reward for me and what's the suffering? Because we'll tap into that chimp's feeling. And if we can kind of remind it of what that will feel like, not what
Okay.
it will be like, what it will feel like,
Yeah.
it's more likely to get on board with you. So if I train, how good is that going to feel when I get home?
Okay.
How good will it feel to walk into my group of friends and say, yeah, I've been to the gym for the 3rd time this week? Because the chimp likes that. It's like getting on board with what it cares about. It cares about fitting into the group.
Okay.
How nice will it feel when I go on holiday and I put on clothes that I want to put, whatever your reason is for doing it? And also, but what would it feel like if I don't? Chimp, do you want to sit and do what we've been doing for the last 52 years?
Yeah.
And then, like end up getting much less fit or actually unwell because you brought that on yourself? Do you really want that? The
Okay.
chimp will get on board, and now your human plan, which has gone, I want to be fit because I want to live a long life for XYZ reasons. Now
Yeah.
we've got both systems together, and that will make them really strong.
Okay. So as I've understood that, then you've got to speak about feelings to yourself or to your chimp. And I guess one of the things that people will often say to me, one of their motivations for working with me sometimes, is they've maybe got parents, elderly parents, who are beginning to suffer from frailty and the things that kick in. And so whilst they're caring for them, they're very involved in that. And there's a lot of emotion knocking around, and that feeling of needing to do something to avoid the suffering that they're almost feeling by proxy, because they were alongside a parent that they're caring for, can be a huge motivator for change. So I guess in order for them to build their new habits, they need to isolate that feeling, not just the practical side, but isolate the feeling and cement that somewhere to be able to refer back to. That would make sense.
It's reminding me of a friend of mine who, our friend died when she was early 40s, and she was a smoker, and they'd been smokers together, all the grew up to teenage to early 40s, mid 40s smoking, and she didn't die of lung cancer, but because that grief was so strong, and my friend made a promise to Michelle as she was dying. She said, I'm not going to smoke for you.
Oh, wow.
And she still doesn't smoke. She does vape, but she doesn't
It's a better
smoke.
trade-off.
It's a better trade-off. But for Michelle, she doesn't smoke. And because that's her chimp system going, and then you kind of do some imagination through it. Every time I go to buy a packet of cigarettes or I reach for a cigarette and I go, Michelle, she goes, no, I made a promise. Even as I say it, that makes me go, oh, that's strong enough that momentarily the chimp is stopped in its tracks because it wanted to go back. The computer's going, no, that's what we do. We smoke. It'll stop, and the chimp is strong enough to go, no. And then the human will come back in. This is blood moving around your brain. Your chimp goes, no, it's all right. But the human goes, yeah, we're right, actually. Think how we'll feel tomorrow. We'll feel much better. Great. Chimp's happy again.
Yeah. And actually, that's a really important point to point out for people, is that these systems actually exist. And when people have gone through scanners, we are able to see where the blood is focused. In the same way that if you do a workout and your heart is working much harder and you can feel it, the same thing is going on in the brain, isn't it? In that when the chimp is active, it's dominating the blood supply. That's really central for people to understand. And maybe I'll overlay some images of what that actually looks like. Because for me, as a supposed scientist of sorts, actually that was really critical to understanding this, is that it's not just, we haven't just named these things for the sake of making it easy to understand. This is actually what's going on in your brain.
And this is so it's blood supply, oxygenated blood moving around the brain. In fact, there's a diagram we will show people, which is how we process information. And the most fundamental to that is when information comes into you. So let's go with my friend, a packet of cigarettes. The chimp sees it first, and it will knock out through a cocktail of neurotransmitters, it knocks out your human. So at that point, when people say, oh, but I just couldn't think, it's like, no, you couldn't, because you didn't have a human on board.
Yeah.
But the chimp will consult your computer there. It will send blood to the computer system and say, what do we think about this? How good or bad is it for us? And if the computer, if you've already thought these things through and you've got some good stuff in there, or you've got Michelle written in there, the chimp will get that information and it will still decide, okay, so what do I do? Do I hand over to the human now and to logic, or do I carry on my unwanted potentially behaviours? So yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why the chimp model, I think, resonates so much, because it's that mixture of, it's simple, but it's science.
Yeah, absolutely, certainly. It's probably, I often think when I've been at the conference, and certainly with the course, it's often why there's a lot of doctors that seem to gravitate towards it as well.
Yeah, and even though, I mean, we have clinical, to do a bit of sell for the chimp model, but we've done clinical trials which have proved very successful. We've done them with nurses, with doctors, with teachers. And also we've got psychiatrists, at the top of their field, say, advocating for the chimp model.
Yeah. Oh, sell away. The more people that go out and adopt this model, the better.
Yeah, and we do. I mean, so again, so much work. I'm not sure who your kind of main listeners are, but we do have a lot of doctors, but a lot of teachers as well, and students. So we go into schools and we do lots of work. And kids are brilliant because their system is so much less complex at that age. They just, we talk about sponges, don't we? They're like, oh, right, okay, so I've got two systems and one of them sometimes isn't very helpful. Great, thanks, crack on. Yeah. And they're like, oh, I'm like 2 sessions in. It's like, no, hang on, you need at least 20 sessions, surely.
Certainly. Okay, so that's a really good example of when you've got a powerful emotional driver.
Yeah.
But what about when something isn't quite so emotive? So let's say you might be overeating, but you haven't got a weight problem, really. You're all right. You haven't tipped over into diabetes or metabolic ill health problem, but you're the type of person who's got an eye on the future and you don't want to become that person. But the problem now is you're flip-flopping about because, well, yeah, I kind of want it to be better. How can people perhaps use what we know about the chimp model to start to deal with those? We've talked about reward and suffering. Sometimes if the suffering is great or the reward is huge, we can get the chimp on board and we can move ourselves in that direction. But there's no immediate suffering and the rewards, well, is there a mechanism, do you think, for helping yourself in that situation? And this was a common theme among the ladies I'm working with, that none of them are drastically metabolically unwell, but don't want to be either.
And therein, I suppose I'd be asking the question as well, because we're kind of neglecting the side of it that says, if there's no actual need, so you're not pre-diabetic, you're not even overeating that much, but we've got that slight, very, very common, slight body dysmorphia, unhealthy need to be in control, there is that flip side of saying, what is the problem here? Is the problem, sorry, I'm leading you, I'm going down a whole different path, but and maybe not answering your question, but
no, that's useful, because one of the first things I get people to do is do the 5 whys. Why are you doing this? And you sometimes have to come back to that, because behaviour change is hard, habit change is hard, and so sometimes you've got to remember why you started in the first place. But I'm just wondering about where you've got perhaps so far with something, but you're still struggling. Is it what's in the computer about things you've put in there about what you should be doing, or what a healthy person does? Do you think, is it something in that territory maybe?
I think there are 3 elements. If I've got somebody who wants to change a habit, I've got the triangle of change, which I've kind of alluded to, which is, do you think it's possible to change your ways? Have you got a plan? Like, have you actually detailed? So have you said, when I go into a restaurant, I'm having this? Have you pre-planned it and looked out for pitfalls to your plan? So it's very human. And have you looked at the suffering or the reward for your chimp? And it might not be immediate, but have you flashed forward? So if it really is, I feel like I could slip into that overeating or eating too much sugar or something like that. Have you thought through how that might affect you in the future? And what reward you can get from carrying out this plan? So that's kind of one element I would really think of, and I think that's probably the most powerful to form a new habit. But also then we've got that self-image I was saying, like I'm a person who does what? Eats bird-like portions. You know, you get people don't. Oh, I always eat like a bird, or I snack often, but I don't eat big meals, or I don't eat carbs. So that you've got the self-image, and then the what's normal for me, which kind of goes hand in hand with that. So it's normal for me to exercise 4 times a week, or it's normal for me to not eat carbs, or it's normal for me to be a vegetarian. So they're building on each other. They're helping whatever plan you've come up with in the first place. If you start re-identifying yourself and thinking that through, plus so self-image and what's the normal, but always you're going back to the chimp, because if without it on board, I think it's just so easy to revert to old patterns. Like I said, the superhighways that were built at the beginning. So we have to reinforce them a lot. And we do that. I mean, like when I'm talking about reinforcing new programs, once you've thought through that program, you think, but it's still not working. You know, like I still didn't go to the gym. So if we don't practice those pathways, they don't get strengthened.
Yeah.
So at Chimp, we kind of say, set yourself up in the morning. How am I going to be today? And what is it that I'm doing? How will I bring myself, like my human really, to the table? But that might include, okay, so today I going to the gym. What time? Be specific. I'm going at 5 o'clock, and the clock says 4:30. The Chimp goes, can I be bothered? But it's gone to the computer, and we went, no, 5 o'clock. And it's just 5 to 6.
Yeah.
We're just doing 5 to 6. And how good will that feel?
Yeah. So I was talking to somebody yesterday about this issue, in that she's created a space in her house to do her training,
right?
Which is great. But she says, I still find myself wanting to avoid it. And she's getting into that argument with herself about whether or not to do it. And I said, well, try this. What I tend to do in that situation is go, right, well, I'll just do 5 minutes. That's the negotiation that I make with my Chimp. And invariably, once I'm in, you think, well, I'll have to finish now because I'm a person who finishes things.
Lovely. Yeah, absolutely.
That may not work for her, and I think that's probably the important thing, is that if you see yourself as somebody as, I'm always starting things and not finished, then you probably need a new strategy that might not necessarily work.
Yeah, and there are some desirables as well, aren't there? Because you can kind of say, my plan, I know it can work, but I need something to strengthen it. And perhaps like with exercise, I think having an exercise buddy is really good. Because again, going back to that chimp and troop thing, if you've got somebody you're accountable to, you're probably more likely to not want to let them down.
Yeah.
You might want a time binding, I think. For me, again, this is very unique, isn't it? But if I say to my Chimp, if I need to plan a presentation, which sometimes I could procrastinate about, I'm like, we're going to do half an hour. And then I'll motivate my Chimp by then saying, and then we're going to go in the garden and do 10 minutes weeding, because my Chimp loves weeding. I don't get it.
Okay.
Not planting, weeding.
Right.
So, but getting out and getting into the fresh air. So that I've dangled a little carrot at it. But I think there is an element of testing things out and saying, what works for me?
Yeah.
But certainly I've done that and it never seems to stick with me. Again, you're giving yourself a norm, aren't you? That I'm a person who, I try this, but it never really works. Or I'm a yo-yo dieter, it's classic.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't mean just because you were like that before, doesn't mean you have to be like that going forward.
Yeah, I think that's really key. I think there are a lot of people who've made their minds up about the type of person that they are, and then there's no point trying to change, which is a struggle. I mean, I meet an awful lot of those people as a GP, and I don't try and tackle that in 10 minutes because that would be impossible. But when I'm working with people as clients, beginning to challenge that, one of the exercises that we did in the course that you were mentoring on, it was the reference of, you give a statement, and the statement was, I exercise 4 times a week. And assessing what your initial reaction to that is really valuable, because whether you see that as excessive, normal, a bit lazy, will tell you an awful lot about yourself. So those type of things, that helps you understand what your brain is defining as normal, whether you keep your house tidy. And I think that again, it just unlocked something for me in terms of, okay, I can harness this to help other people. So when they're starting off and trying to bring in a new habit, if they see me as a coach who is expecting them to train 7 days a week, we're not going to get there, because their computer's going to go, that's absolutely ridiculous. So trying to make it work.
It's finding the middle, like almost an acceptable change as well, isn't it? So slowly, like you said, if I say, oh, I'll go and do 5 minutes, invariably once we're up and started, we'll do a bit more. So if you're saying, okay, I want you to exercise 7 days, it's unrealistic. So we want to start with a little bit of reality whilst it being incremental. It's like the Chimp's brilliant at saying, oh, I'm going to be a person who, New Year's resolutions, I'm going to be a person who exercises 7 days a week. And then after 3 days gives up because it was unrealistic. Like, okay, that's the dream. The dream is to exercise every day. But actually, let's start with building up a 3-month habit of exercising. It could be once a week for some people, twice a week, and then build onto that. So we start being and measuring the expectation. Otherwise, the Chimp will just give up. We'll set something too high and then go, well, that's it. I can't do it then.
Yeah. And then I guess you run the risk of putting something else in your computer that's not particularly helpful about not succeeding at things or giving up when it gets hard. And so when actually it was just unachievable in the first place. I mean, that's not to say for everybody. Stuart, who normally does the podcast with me, he will take somebody and he would say if he was here that, well, anybody can do a marathon. And I'd immediately go, well, why would you want to? But he is very, very certain in that belief that you can do anything if you set your mind to it. And
but that's an example of an autopilot for me. And I do have the same belief. If you set your mind to it, it's a bit like any relationship. If you want any relationship to work, the chance is you can make it work. It's just whether you've got enough reason to do it.
Okay.
So running a marathon, for me, I have no reason to do it. I probably have a belief in my head that's very bad for my knees at this age. And I certainly have and I certainly have a program that I'm not a runner.
Yeah.
So, but it's belief based. It's always belief based. And you can see a lot of it from patterns of behavior and patterns of belief. A lot of them do come down to when you were young. If you think back about what was the definition of yourself when you were young, how did people describe you? Most people, it hasn't deviated a whole heap.
That's fascinating. Yes. I'm just thinking of another friend who would describe herself as not being able to cook, and yet there's no evidence to support that, that ancient kind of thing that's buried in her mind.
We delete it, distort it, or generalize it into whatever. That's a very NLP phrase, but there's too much information in the world to process everything. So we choose the bits that suit our narrative. Again, that's a very kind of TikTok-y phrase at the moment, isn't it? It's my narrative. But it kind of is, because you've only got a very small bit that you can consciously process. So it's much easier. Let's take the shortcut. It's much easier to say, well, that's the kind of person I am. Therefore, I can delete all of that stuff. All of those options. There are too many. And I don't know about you, but I think there's an element of acceptance. So yes, we can change. I'm not the person I was yesterday. I've already changed. That can be really empowering. And at the same time, if I accept the nature of myself, my Chimp, I know what my Chimp is driven by, so I can harness it if I want to. And if I can just accept that it does come with some bits that aren't that helpful, that do over worry, that do whatever it does, try to be perfect and not ask for help. But then as soon as I've accepted it, it makes it much easier to recognize it and go, but I can modify that a bit.
Absolutely. And I think one of the exercises at the very start of A Path Through the Jungle is to get a piece of paper and write down some of the traits that you think your Chimp has, and I was able to recognise, and under pressure, I will get quite controlling. It then enables a feeling of security. But I'm not sure that I'd ever really... Maybe I knew it on some level, but to actually acknowledge it. But it's really helpful now to recognise that, okay, if I say yes to too much and everything gets chaotic, what's going to happen? I'll get stroppy because I can't control everything. And actually, again, it's just feeding into that Chimp drive that needs a little bit more control. When it's got enough, it'll relax, when things slip a little bit. So I think that is a really useful exercise for people to spend some time and go, okay, if I'm going to look to try and change my behaviour, it's not always going to be easy. I'm going to feel a little bit stressed or a bit frustrated. So what do I tend to do in those situations? And
what's my default? And when you know it as well, I suppose the flip side is, if you saying, I know my chimp likes to be in control of lots of things, but then we also want to give it a bit of that, I suppose. So, then if it's not got control of anything, or it feels out of control, that's going to be a trigger. So we want to make sure that it does have its needs met.
Yeah.
It's ironic, isn't it? Because you just said it wants to control lots of things, so it takes on loads more things so it can be in control of it. But then by the very nature, it can't be in control of it because there's too many things. So it's almost just shot itself in the foot.
Yes, it unravels. Absolutely.
That's where it needs the human to go, hang on a minute. You think that by taking on all of these things, you're in control. But actually, I know that that's not sustainable. We'll feel out of control. So that's why I need to say no to some things, because that's being kind to myself, but also being kind to whoever I'm saying yes or no to. And we're still reminding the chimp, but we're still being in control of this block here. It's really like the understanding will lead to looking after.
Yeah.
It will lead to, and also saying, come on, chimp, no, we want to be in control of what we eat or how much exercise we do. And the chimp will go, oh yeah, I like control.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Yeah. That's a really good way of looking at it. One of the things that's come up time and time again is procrastination. What's going on with procrastination most of the time?
I'm going to throw it right back at you. You've been on the course. What do you think's going on, Nanette?
I think with most procrastination, it's the two circuits talking to one another, the chimp trying to get its own way, but the human's doing a reasonable job of trying to persuade the chimp that it can come on board, but probably not winning.
It's tough, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. The human knows what it wants to do, but the chimp's kind of often backing off, unless of course the human says, no, I do want to avoid that task, thank you very much, I'm with you here.
Yeah, like getting things organised for your accountant for your tax return. Perfect example. It's going to need done at some point, but I'm procrastinating about it until there's a deadline, maybe.
So there might be a few, again, definitely individual. So if you look at that tax return avoidance thing, there'll be some computer programs. As soon as I say tax return to a lot of people, they go, oh my God.
Yes.
So already we've got the program straight away. Then there might be, now again, depending on who it is, there might be a fear. If I do my tax return, that might mean, that means authority to me. So an authority, for some reason, doing a tax return, some people feel like, oh God, for some reason, you don't want to get it wrong. This is the law and it's a legal document and it keeps telling you, So it's a bit scary because so then the chimp's going, oh, but it's my security here and I'm a bit afraid of authority. And so, I'm going to shy away from it. So I'll just avoid it. Because the chimp's answer to anything is avoid. Even though we know the longer I put it off, I've got to do it. I've got the information.
Yeah.
It might be that's again that I'm going to have to pay something because I'm going to owe money, and I don't like doing that.
No. So
I'm going to avoid it. It might be you've got a program in your head of I work better to a deadline. So a lot of people will be, say, I'm a lastminute.com person. We're going back to that self-identity, aren't we?
Okay.
I need a deadline. So why would I do it in May when I can do it in October? It may be just that they feel like it's complex or that it's a big effort to do. Very simple, it does take effort. But what were we expecting? Why every year do I do this? I know it's an effort. I know it only takes me a day. So, but what was I expecting it to suddenly become easy? And so we're needing to warm up the computer. We're saying tax returns take a day. I'm going to put a day in my diary where I'm going to do it. And I'm a person who does what they've earmarked to do.
Again, drawing on that identity of I'm the type of person who does this. Yeah.
And there is, not the tax return maybe so much, but I think Procrastination and perfectionism, often I'll get clients who present one or the other, but they tap into the same thing. Procrastination may be a symptom of perfectionism.
That's interesting. Okay.
Because if I want to do something perfectly, if my chimp's constantly thinking, I need to do things perfectly, I don't want to ask for help, I need it to look good because that's what people expect of me, but I don't know how to do it. So I don't want to write this presentation today because I'm not sure it will be perfect.
Okay.
Therefore, I'll put it off. Or I don't want to start going to the gym because when I go to the gym for the first time, I'm going to look like an idiot.
Okay.
Because I don't know how to do those exercises. So I'm either going to have to ask the person in the PT who's on duty, or I'm going to have to look around. And this is, go to the gym with a teen, you'll find this. They do not want to look silly in front of the peers, especially when it's about literally about muscle and strength.
Yeah.
So, so therefore I'll procrastinate because I think I'm going to look silly in that situation.
All right.
So again, they can tie together. So I'm really all the time with people, I'm trying to look, well, what's the underlying belief there?
Right.
What's the fear or what's the worry that your chimp might have? Or is it something that I've just, that's me, that's how I've always been.
Okay. So in the space that you're procrastinating, you need to dig a little deeper to work out what is the belief or what is going on.
Is there a computer program? Basically, is that just what I've always done?
Really helpful.
Or is there something underneath it that the chimp, and I love those questions, chimp, what are you worried about? Chimp, what are you scared of? So if it's the tax return, again, it's like, but I'm scared that I'll make a mistake and then, that I'll be arrested and put in prison. Now I can understand the chimp going, oh, okay, so you're worried that if you make a mistake on a tax return, you've jumped to this massive catastrophizing. Have you done anything wrong? No. If you made a mistake, would there probably be a couple of questions first? Yeah. Or would, is your accountant going to get it wrong for you? Because it's not even my problem then. So, but now I've settled the chimp and I go, okay, so I think that we should do this tomorrow. Okay, Lynette, you're going to do your tax return tomorrow now?
No, because it's boring. And I have a problem with making myself do boring things.
So then we can use it. Right. So what could you use to motivate your chimp to do it?
I need a deadline. Yeah.
Okay.
I need my accountant to pester me a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah. This is the same pattern every year.
Yeah.
And I know it needs done. It's not like I can't not pay my tax. It's but I look at it and think, God.
But then
boring.
Well, it is so boring, isn't it? And there's so many pages.
Yeah, and I guess as well, I start off the year being quite organised with expenses and things, and then it fizzles out because that's boring, sorting all that out. So then I have to acknowledge that my system slipped by about September, and and there's my identity again.
Every year I'm so happy I don't have lots of money. That's like, oh, good, another page I don't have to do.
Yeah.
Doom, no.
Oh God.
But I think in those cases as well, when it's in terms of procrastination, we'll spend an awful long time, when you've got something like that to do and you have got a lot, you've basically got best part of a year to think about doing the next one. So, but instead of wasting the time of the chimp going, oh, we should do that today, we should do it tomorrow. If you do decide, no, I've tried whatever I've tried, and I'm a person who likes a deadline. I need my accountant to hassle me, but he's not going to hassle me. She's not going to hassle me until... Then that's when the deadline is. So then the chimp says we should do a tax return. You say, no, we're not doing it now. We're waiting till we've got a deadline because that's when I'll do it best.
Yeah. Learn from experience.
It's still answering it. And if it's perfectly acceptable. So long as you do it, it's still acceptable to do it on September the 30th, isn't it? Or whenever, I don't know what the deadline is there. But we need an answer. Otherwise we'll be, but we could do it today. Or should we do that bit? No, we need the deadline. And so we're doing it then.
Right.
Today we're doing this, which is much more fun. We'll do the boring thing later. So it's almost like giving it reason to procrastinate, but with a focus.
And so to take that same analogy for clients of mine who have, when you're an online client, you can put your training wherever you want in the week. But I guess for some people, that's almost too much choice. So if they're struggling with procrastination and moving it through the week, then actually we need to narrow down their options and say, no, this is when you're going to do it. So it's a sort of the same analogy that I have for a year, but we bring it down to a week.
Yeah. So, mum don't, and then you wake up in the morning. Oh, I don't think I want to go to the gym. Well, we're not doing that now. We're doing that at 5 o'clock today.
Yeah.
So we're not worrying about that now because we know that at 4:45 we're out of the door.
Yeah.
And at 4:30 we've put our, because going to the gym doesn't begin with going to the gym. Going to the gym begins with putting your clothes on.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like work backwards.
Yeah, I did actually. One of the strategies I suggested people use in terms of getting their baseline activity up, put your clothes out the night before.
Nice.
Because if you don't do it, you've got to put those clothes away. And how are you
eliminate choice?
How are you going to feel putting those clothes away, knowing you didn't put them on and do the thing that you'd committed with yourself doing it? But
beautiful.
That has certainly worked for me in the past. Just a quick question, if you've got time, on relapsing. And I'm not talking about the addiction, the addict that relapses. I'm talking about the person who's doing really well with some sustained behaviour change over a period of time, but invariably will fall off the new habit. I heard a psychologist recently on another podcast talk about the process of building new habits, like walking through a forest and you're following the well-trodden path. You could go a different way, but there's no path there, so you'll have to walk it several times until it becomes worn in and you can see the path. And that's almost like what new habits are like. And I really liked that because it makes sense. It's very visual. But what happens when you accidentally take the wrong turn and you end up back on the well-trodden path? What's mostly going on there, do you think?
Well, I think mostly there's default. So we've taken in terms of like our work, we'll say if you're not doing the work and you're not putting the effort in, I mean, Steve's brilliant. He's kind of slap therapy man. So he'll say, well, what do you want me to do? If you're not doing the work, what do you want me to do? So quite often, and he did it with Ronnie O'Sullivan. Oh, but it's not working, Steve. Said, well, have you done the work? And he went, well, no. And he went, well, come back and see me when you have.
Right.
Ronnie then went away, came back with a hardback book and said, I've got loads of questions, and started doing the work daily. And for a lot of people, we just forget to do the work. So a bit like the analogy of a workout, you stop doing the sit-ups, you're not going to see your abs as much, are you? So there is a default, accepting that we have that nature of us that we probably will default to is one thing. I think it always feels worse when you relapse, doesn't it? Because in fact, this morning I had a client who said, I was doing so well and I was so upset with myself because I felt like I've gone back to what I was doing before and I'm not managing my chimp and it feels awful. I thought I'd got there. And again, it's like, that's worse than if you don't know what the good stuff is.
Yeah.
So it's, if I start eating badly and I've really kind of got to that point of I'm a person who eats healthily and I go to bed feeling like I've had the right things, I put the right things in my body, and then I go back and I'm enjoying it. It's like, God, I didn't know what it felt like before. So almost it's accept it. It's really normal to default.
It's interesting because when people are trying to lose weight, I will often remind people, and gaining strength is the same to a degree, but the progress is never linear. No. If you've got a long weight loss journey ahead, do not expect that the graph just to go in a straight line down. It doesn't. There's going to sometimes be setbacks. And I often think that having that in your computer early on, knowing that, it's still annoying on weeks when you've tried really hard and the scale's not moved, but it is normal. It is a case of reframing that normal. But in terms of the feeling, it reminded me of a group I've run recently. I'm going to run it again for women who were undecided about whether to use weight loss injections. So I ran a 6-week course with various bits of content for them to hopefully make a more informed choice. And many of them said towards the end, actually, I've decided I'm not going to use them because the thought that I might lose lots of weight to come off them to regain it is almost worse than just taking my time. That wasn't an intended outcome. But there is that element, isn't there, of actually almost feeling worse when you've made some good progress and you fall off the wagon. I know that the addictions models that are in use will often prepare people and expect to have a few relapses if you're in AA and that kind of thing. But when we're not dealing with addictions, somehow we seem to expect more perfection.
Yeah.
Than is probably realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just reminded me of a part of the mind that does that. So you're effectively saying our expectation is everything. And we do have, the Chimp system in particular has a way of putting an expectation in that is linear. It doesn't really see that, kind of life's ups and downs very much. And it's predicting. Every day it's predicting. And you have a part of your brain in the chimp system that's called your negative reward prediction error neurons.
Oh, love that.
They're
Okay.
nice. And they detect when anything goes off that, especially negatively, it detects it. And it goes, alert, 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 what's going wrong?
Right.
So we're kind of, it's saying this isn't normal. But actually, the research is saying it is normal. So we need to, when we're adopting a new habit or trying to stop doing something or trying to start doing something, building that in.
Right. Yeah.
So it will be normal. Now, and that doesn't mean, some people say, oh, but that's like a plan B, or that's building yourself, setting yourself up for failure. I don't think it is. It's just saying, no, this is normal. This is the trajectory that we will expect. And actually, a really nice activity to do for that is, if you take your life, right, kind of draw yourself a timeline from birth to now, and just plot the times in your life where there've been highs, when there've been lows, any challenges that you've had, any new habits you've adopted, like plot them in just on a kind of on a normal line graph, and then think, well, what's the future likely to be like? Or what's the trajectory of this habit likely to be like? It's likely to be like that. Okay, that's normal. So then as soon as it does go off kilter, you go, right, okay, that's normal. But I think that feeling, again, i.e. the chimp, going, poor me, or whatever your kind of program is that your chimp will self-flagellate or feel sorry for itself, or just say, well, I'll just give up now then. But your human's going, no, this is normal. So what we do is, tomorrow's another day.
Yeah.
Let's start tomorrow. What should we do tomorrow? Well, I'm going to eat this, or I'm going to exercise in this way. And that's fine.
I'm so glad you mentioned timelines, and I'll tell you why. I have to put this in, that I've used them for years with patients. I first got the idea when I had a patient a long time ago who wanted a referral to psychiatry because he was convinced he had bipolar disorder. And he came in one day with his wife, and he'd put his whole life on this timeline, and it was had diagrams and everything. It was a beautiful piece of work. But what he'd done is highlighted across his life when things had been really bad or really good. And it was really helpful because I hadn't met him before, and we had 10 minutes. And so this kind of this picture of his life made me process the referral. It was much, much easier. But then over the years, when you work in the same place, what you can sometimes spot on people's records is, by the nature of the batch of bloods that's been ordered, you can make sense of what they've probably come in with. And I started to put together that for some people, there's obviously points in the year where perhaps they get a bit stressed or fatigue starts to accumulate, and it manifests in certain symptoms that's bringing them in because they're concerned about a particular condition. And last year I had a lady who'd been in on the exact same day, and I said, what's going on at the end of the summer holidays that seems to bring you in? And we did the timeline exercise, and I suspect it's a combination of kids being off school and too many plates spinning and all that kind of thing. But also the process of writing it out on a bit of paper is so helpful for us to be able to see things more clearly, isn't it?
Yeah.
The paper and pen, I mean, you'll never replace it. It's just so valuable for understanding yourself and literally just writing it out.
And again, research backs that up massively, that, put something down, paper. I mean, obviously you've got people who really hate writing, but then draw it, draw a timeline or whatever it is. But it helps get it out of the head. So I suppose and because it's engaging different parts of your mind, that's why it's such a cathartic exercise, because it's almost like you have to be logical in that bit. So you're really engaging your human. Even though we'll often recommend, go and write down all your chimp's concerns. Do it before bed. If you're at a period of extreme worry in your life or something, write everything down. Let the chimp go mad for 5 minutes. Don't even stop writing. And let it just splurge. But then you're almost seeing it back, aren't you? And therefore you've got different perspective, a different pair of eyes. The chimp wrote it, but the human's now seeing it. Read it back, and you'll often go, oh, that's ridiculous. Also burns itself out a little bit. But seeing things pictorially can be really helpful. And certainly you're pattern matching, aren't you? So you're doing it as a doctor. You're going, okay, right, this patient coming back with a fear of, I don't know, having a terrible disease, or always comes in with this bit of skin looks a bit odd. I'm now embarrassed because I'm thinking about what my GP must think of me. but that if we do it for ourselves as well and pattern match ourselves,
Mm.
say, well, what does my cycle look like in life? Even like weekly, monthly,
Yeah.
yearly. Summer holidays are a trigger.
Mm.
Children being off school is a trigger. I feel more stressed. Okay, well, duh.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And that's okay.
if your habits keep breaking down, okay, what's the pattern here? Let's try and
Yes.
actually work out what things are feeding into this.
Yeah.
Um, what's that saying? The best predictor of future behaviour is past behaviour, or something. Again. Fabulous. Great.
Mm.
So, for everybody that's still listening, please tell them. I will tell everybody that I meet that they need some Chimp in their life, but how can they make use of Chimp management? Because there's so much free content available all through the service that
Yeah.
I don't think enough people are making use of it. So
Yeah.
please give a pitch for everything Chimp related, because I just think it's so valuable for people.
Yeah. So I think, and Chimp, the our raison d'etre is to help people and to help charities.
Mm,
So it really is. That's why there's loads of free content. So go on to chimpmanagement.com.
mm,
It has a new website. Sign up. I would recommend just having a little read through. Sign up for the troop.
mm-hmm,
It's a free, again, it costs you your email address.
mm,
Every month we do, Steve and one of the mentors will do a monthly webcast, giving you a little bit of insight into one of the elements of the model and then things you can practically do
mm-hmm,
towards it. Then later in the month we do a Q&A, so you can send questions in like you've got from your listeners, and a couple of the mentors will tackle those questions and put it through the lens of the model. So already got that. There will be, they've been temporarily taken off, but there are free videos on there. There's articles written. So on your website, you've got loads of free stuff there. Obviously, you've got the Chimp Paradox, which is the original, the OG, the
yeah,
OG book. But
absolutely.
there is, for parents out there, you've got the Silent Guides, which is for parents and carers. So how to understand what's going on for young people. And then you've got My Hidden Chimp, which is for children,
Mm-hmm,
which is a fantastically interactive, colourful, designed for primary kids, really.
mm-hmm,
Book, which I thoroughly recommend. And then, as you've talked about, The Path Through the Jungle,
mm-hmm.
which is more like a manual. So don't receive it and go, oh my God, take it slowly. It's got loads of exercises, loads of the neuroscience in it. And then you can target, there's a chapter on relationships, or there's a chapter on habit change.
Mm-hmm.
There's chapters on stress management. So you can just pick and choose through that. We have conferences which are run. We have an annual conference in May. So it's not too late. Well, it's in 2 weeks, but almost too late. That's in Sheffield. There's a Christmas conference. This year there's a business conference in September in Birmingham. And we also run retreats. So up in near Buxton, we have a beautiful coach house where about 8 people, we have weekend or one day seminars, retreats, and one of the mentors runs them. You go along, there's a theme, and we have lots of time for people to interact, to normalize themselves, know other people have got chimps, give each other support. I mean, people come out, retreats is one of my favorite things to run, because people come out of them literally looking like different people. They come in feeling like they're abnormal, they're full of anxiety, they don't know who they are, and they come out standing tall, going, right, okay, people like me. Other people are the same as me, and it's such a powerful weekend. So I'd say, and it's incredibly good value. Nothing Chimp does is extortionately expensive. We do one-to-one and workshops and keynotes and things if people want individual help, but that's all on the website. So
yeah. And so if people do find the books heavy going, not natural readers, I would say join the troop, because what it does is it sends right to your email inbox little digestible bits that are broken down, and you will be able to access and get value from that even if you haven't managed to make it through the end of the book. I just think it's ultimately, I think for anybody navigating life and the stresses that life brings, understanding how we process stuff and how to make it more manageable is just such a valuable skill.
Yeah, and if I gave you a couple of kind of takeaways of things to do to your listeners, I'd say that twofold. One is do a blank piece of paper exercise, not for your chimp, but write down, because we're focusing very much on the chimp here. But actually, who are you? So write down on a piece of paper the qualities or characteristics of the you that you would choose to be if you didn't have a system that interfered with you. So how would you, and use that list then to think, how do I want to be in the world today? And by reading it back and thinking, well, what does that look like in life? You're making new pathways. You've got the neuroplasticity, you're digging the superhighway deviation, but really focusing on, well, how would I want to handle this? Not what I'm doing, oh my God, but I'm getting carried away by what I'm not doing. But okay, so how do I want to handle it? And that's really powerful in itself. So that's what the one bit. And the other bit is, as you said, getting to know your chimp, just thinking what's important to it, where does it trip me up, so I can just spot it and then stop it and then make a choice.
Yeah, and make a plan. And I must show you this, which on that note, my friend had made for me for my birthday last month. A Steve quote, which if anybody's watching it on YouTube...
The person that you want to be is the person that you really are.
Taken from A Path Through the Jungle, and I think that is really worth remembering. And I think in the more recent podcasts that I've heard Steve talk on, he seems to put that at the forefront of everything that he's talking
you
about.
are that person. And again, and you are resilient. It's
Yeah.
just things get in our way. But yeah, it's so powerful. That's lovely.
Fabulous. Jess, thank you very much for giving me your time. Tremendous value. I'll be referring people back to this episode often. Thank you very much.
Great. No, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks, Lynette, and good luck to everybody and their chimps.
Yes.